Welcome back, focused learners. I am absolutely beyond excited for today's explainer because, well, we're going to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about studying, learning, and mastering new skills. Seriously, if you've ever felt like you're putting in hours and hours of hard work only to just forget the material a week later, this is exactly what you need.
Okay, picture this. You're flying a twin-engine Cessna, totally alone, through the dead of night at 11,000 feet, and suddenly your right engine loses oil pressure and just dies. This actually happened to a pilot named Matt Brown. As he's plummeting through the sky, do you think cramming a flight manual or quickly rereading his notes right in that terrifying moment would help him land the plane safely? Of course not. In high-stakes moments, you need true, deeply embedded mastery. And that intense scenario brings us straight to the source material for today's explainer, Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. Written by cognitive scientists Peter C. Brown, Henry L. Roediger III, and Mark A. McDaniel, this groundbreaking book reveals a really hard truth. When it comes to learning, our deepest intuitions are fundamentally flawed. Basically, we've been going about it all wrong.
Look, most of us default to what's called massed practice. You know the drill, the classic practice, 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 cramming all night, and rereading our notes until they just feel familiar. So the crucial point is, this fluency creates a dangerous illusion of knowing. You feel like you've mastered the material because, hey, it's easy to read in the moment, right? But that kind of learning is literally like writing in sand. Here today, completely gone tomorrow. To see what true learning actually looks like, let's look at the incredible case of neurosurgeon Mike Ebersold. A hunter is rushed into his emergency room, shot in the head. While Ebersold is in the middle of removing the bullet, a massive sinus vein bursts. He has only seconds to stop a catastrophic bleed. He can't pause to think or check a textbook. He reflexively takes muscle plugs from the patient's skin and stitches them right into the vein. It's a move he essentially invented and practiced perfectly. But how on earth did he build that reflex? Well, he built it through what cognitive psychologists call the testing effect. Ebersold constantly mentally rehearsed and retrieved this information, visualizing exactly what he'd do in a crisis. The testing effect shifts our whole view of testing. Instead of just being a dipstick to measure what you already know, it turns testing into one of the most powerful learning tools we have. Every single time you actively retrieve a memory, you interrupt the forgetting process, and you actually strengthen your neural pathways. And the real-world impact of this, it's undeniable. In a study at Columbia Middle School, 8th graders were given low-stakes quizzes on certain material, while other material was just reviewed normally. A month later, the kids averaged an A on the quizzed material and a C+ on the non-quizzed material. Simply practicing retrieval boosted their scores by a full letter grade. It's like a cheat code for your brain.
Section 1. Mix up your practice. The Beanbag Study. Let's move to Huang and see how this builds. Researchers had 8-year-olds practice tossing beanbags into buckets for gym class. Half the kids practiced tossing into a bucket exactly 3 feet away. The other half mixed it up, practicing with buckets 2 feet and 4 feet away. Later, they were all tested on the 3-foot toss. So who do you think won? Believe it or not, the kids who practiced at 2 and 4 feet absolutely crushed the kids who only practiced at 3 feet. No way, right? The kids who performed best had never even practiced the exact target they were tested on. By varying their practice, they developed this flexible movement vocabulary. They learned how to adapt and adjust to different contexts, which completely outperformed standard, repetitive, boring practice. Now, when this translates to cognitive tasks, it gets really interesting. Using interleaved practice, which basically means mixing up different subjects or problem types, initially feels sluggish. It feels harder and, honestly, much more confusing than just cramming one topic at a time. Actually, it feels kind of counterproductive at first. But that struggle is exactly what forces your brain to learn how to assess context and discriminate between different types of problems so you know exactly which solution to apply when life throws them at you entirely out of order. I mean, just look at this massive statistic. When college students used interleaved practice to learn how to compute the volumes of obscure geometric solids, their final test performance was boosted by an astonishing 215% compared to students who studied one problem type at a time. 215%. That is the absolute power of mixing it up. Section 2. Embrace desirable difficulties. Paratrooper training. This brings us to a super fascinating concept, anchored by Marine First Lieutenant Mia Blondetto, going through the terrifying rigors of jump school. Her training is the perfect example of desirable difficulties. In jump school, they don't just lecture you. you are thrown into escalating, completely unpredictable physical tests. You practice falling from a zip line, then a 34-foot tower, randomly simulating the absolute chaos of a real jump. These short-term impediments require immense effort and actually slow down the initial learning process, for sure. But they ensure that when Mia was suddenly tangled in another jumper's parachute at 4,000 feet, her true mastery kicked in, and she calmly navigated her way to safety.
Okay, let's dive into this and look under the hood at the biological mechanics of how this actually works in your brain. There are 3 clear steps to memory. Step 1 is encoding, where your brain converts sensory perceptions into short-term memory traces. Step 2 is consolidation, where those traces are strengthened over hours or even days. And step 3 is retrieval, where calling that knowledge back actually updates and reinforces the whole thing. The source text uses this brilliant metaphor that I just love. Think of memory consolidation like drafting an essay. Your first draft is messy, it's disorganized, but if you put it away for a few days and come back to it, you can revise it, cut the fluff, and connect the main ideas into something really elegant. Well, your brain does the exact same thing with information. That's why spacing out your practice and letting a little bit of forgetting set in is so essential. It forces your brain to reconsolidate and revise the memory.
Listen, if studying currently feels difficult to you, if you get frustrated because you feel a little rusty trying to recall a fact, that is actually a fantastic sign. It means you are doing the important work. You're building durable bridges to advanced learning. We really need to stop equating easy with effective. When learning is harder, it is undeniably stronger and lasts way longer. Section 3. How to make it stick. The actionable toolkit. So how do we actually replace the comforting habit of cramming in our own lives? Let's synthesize this science into an actionable toolkit for your next big presentation, exam, or project. First, regular self-quizzing. Ditch the highlighter and use flashcards to force active retrieval. Second, space out your practice sessions over days rather than hours. Third, interleave different subjects or problem types to train your brain to adapt. And finally, embrace setbacks and difficulties as necessary effort, not as a sign of failure or low intelligence. Now, you've probably seen this famous quote on a t-shirt or a dorm room poster. Creativity is more important than knowledge. It sounds great, doesn't it? But the science challenges this dichotomy. True creativity actually requires a sturdy, highly accessible foundation of memorized knowledge. You literally can't creatively solve a crisis in the operating room or the cockpit if you don't instantly know your foundational facts.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. Unlike a computer's hard drive, your brain doesn't just fill up. Through a process called elaboration, which is expressing new concepts in your own words and connecting them to your prior experiences, there is virtually no limit to what you can learn. What if your brain's capacity is truly boundless, waiting only for you to change how you practice? Try these retrieval strategies out this week and watch your own potential unlock. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.